Imagine a world where one person's mistake led to millions of deaths, caused irreversible environmental damage, and altered the course of history forever. Meet Thomas Midgley, the man who didn't know he was creating a deadly legacy for the entire planet. His inventions, meant to help humanity, instead brought unprecedented harm. But how did a brilliant inventor become one of the most dangerous people in history, without ever intending to? In the history of science, the names of some individuals remain etched in memory for their groundbreaking achievements. However, few of these names are remembered for the catastrophic consequences they unleashed. One such name is Thomas Midgley, a brilliant inventor whose discoveries would inadvertently lead to one of the deadliest environmental and health crises in human history. Midgley, who believed he was serving humanity with his inventions, left behind one of the deadliest legacies the world has ever known. His story serves as a stark reminder of how science, when misapplied or misunderstood, can lead to unforeseen consequences. As we dive into his life and work, we'll uncover how a series of well-intentioned experiments turned into an environmental disaster and a public health nightmare. Born in 1889 in Indianapolis, Indiana, Thomas Midgley was recognized from an early age for his remarkable scientific mind. He pursued mechanical engineering and soon became involved in the rapidly growing automobile industry. By the time he was in his late 20s, he had already made a name for himself at the General Motors, GM, company, where he would begin his most influential work. One of the critical problems engineers were trying to solve at the time was engine knock, an annoying, loud noise caused by the fuel igniting prematurely within the engine. This issue was especially problematic in more powerful engines, which required higher compression. Midgley, who had been hired by GM to improve engine performance, began experimenting with various additives that could prevent knocking and make the engines run more smoothly. In the early 1920s, Midgley and his team began testing various chemicals to find an inexpensive and effective solution. After many unsuccessful attempts, they stumbled upon tetraethyl lead as a solution. When added to gasoline, this compound eliminated engine knock, improving engine performance. By 1921, Midgley and his team had developed a leaded gasoline that worked remarkably well in eliminating knocking. The new fuel, which was marketed under the name ethyl, quickly gained widespread adoption. It was used in vehicles across the United States and later around the world. The invention seemed like a breakthrough, an answer to a significant engineering problem. But little did anyone know that this discovery would lead to one of the greatest public health disasters of the 20th century. Lead had been known as a neurotoxin for centuries, and even in the early 20th century, its harmful effects on human health were well documented. However, to avoid alarming the public and to protect the commercial success of their invention, the companies involved in producing leaded gasoline, including General Motors, DuPont, and Standard Oil, deliberately omitted any mention of lead in their advertisements. Instead, they branded the new fuel as ethyl, hoping to prevent consumers from associating the product with the dangerous metal. As the use of leaded gasoline spread, signs of the dangerous side effects began to surface. Factory workers involved in the production of tetraethyl lead began experiencing symptoms of lead poisoning, including memory loss, tremors, and hallucinations. Some workers even died as a result of exposure to the toxic substance. Yet, the companies continued to downplay the dangers, choosing to prioritize profits over public health. The widespread use of leaded gasoline quickly became a global phenomenon. However, as more people were exposed to the compound, the first signs of harm began to appear. Workers at leaded gasoline factories started exhibiting strange and dangerous behaviors. Many suffered from psychological symptoms, including hallucinations and violent outbursts. 5 workers died in just 2 months at one such factory, and dozens more were hospitalized. But despite these early warnings, the industry continued to deny the risks associated with leaded gasoline. Public outrage grew, but powerful oil and automobile industries remained insistent that the amount of lead in gasoline was not harmful to human health. In the 1950s, Claire Patterson, a geochemist, was tasked with determining the age of the Earth. To do so, he used a method involving the analysis of uranium and lead isotopes found in ancient zircon crystals. However, Patterson quickly noticed something strange. His samples were contaminated with lead. Patterson, puzzled by this unexpected contamination, began investigating the source of the lead. His research led him to an alarming conclusion. The lead contamination wasn't just in his laboratory. it was all around the world. As he expanded his research, he discovered that lead levels had significantly increased in the atmosphere and ocean since the introduction of leaded gasoline. Lead is a deadly neurotoxin that affects virtually every organ system in the human body. When ingested or inhaled, lead can cause irreversible damage to the brain, kidneys, and nervous system. Children, in particular, are highly vulnerable to lead exposure, and even small amounts of lead can significantly impair brain development, leading to reduced IQ and learning disabilities. As Patterson's research progressed, he realized that the widespread use of leaded gasoline had created a global public health crisis. He found that the lead levels in the bones and blood of humans had increased dramatically since the introduction of leaded gasoline. His findings were supported by the fact that children living in areas with high levels of air pollution had higher concentrations of lead in their blood. Patterson's findings were met with resistance from the powerful industries involved in the production of leaded gasoline. Despite the mounting evidence of the dangers of lead exposure, the oil and automobile industries fought back, using their influence to prevent meaningful action from being taken. For over 20 years, Patterson struggled to get his research published and to raise awareness about the dangers of leaded gasoline. He faced significant opposition from industry lobbyists, and his funding was cut. Despite these obstacles, Patterson remained committed to his mission, knowing that the health of future generations depended on the truth being exposed. Eventually, in the 1970s, Patterson's research and the growing body of evidence led to significant changes in U.S. regulations. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, began reducing the amount of lead allowed in gasoline, and in the 1980s, many countries began to phase out leaded gasoline altogether. The final blow to leaded gasoline came in the 2000s when global organizations such as the United Nations called for a complete ban. By 2021, Algeria became the last country to stop selling leaded gasoline, marking the end of an era that had caused irreparable damage to both human health and the environment. Midgley's troubles didn't end with leaded gasoline. After the success of tetraethyl lead, GM tasked Midgley with finding a safer refrigerant for air conditioning and refrigerators. At the time, many refrigerators used toxic and flammable gases like ammonia, which posed a significant risk of explosion. Midgley's solution was to invent Freon, a chlorine-based refrigerant, which was initially thought to be perfectly safe. But, as with leaded gasoline, the long-term effects of Freon were not understood. Over time, it became clear that Freon was causing significant damage to the ozone layer, contributing to the depletion of this vital protective barrier against harmful ultraviolet radiation. The story of Thomas Midgley is a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of scientific innovation. While his inventions were seen as revolutionary at the time, they caused harm that far outweighed any potential benefit. Midgley's story is a reminder that science must be practiced with an awareness of its potential long-term consequences, especially when it involves substances that can harm the environment or human health. Thomas Midgley, despite his genius and the groundbreaking nature of his inventions, became one of the most tragic figures in the history of science. His story illustrates the fine line between scientific progress and ethical responsibility. While science holds the power to solve many of humanity's problems, it also comes with the potential for devastating unintended consequences. Midgley's legacy serves as a powerful reminder that the pursuit of knowledge must always be accompanied by a deep sense of responsibility.